everyone, I'm the Book Guy, and welcome back to my read-through of the Discworld series. I'm so excited to continue. Today we're going through Witches Abroad, which is the 12th novel overall, the 3rd novel in the Witches sub-series. And if you want to be technical, it's the second novel that actually has the coven as the main characters, so our 3 trio of witches. But before we get into today's book, let me just remind you of the rules for the video series we're doing here. So first rule is that it's very episodic. Discworld is an episodic series. You can watch them in any order. It won't impact your reading. Number 2, there won't be any spoilers because I want to make this easy for people who haven't read the series before to, motivate you to give it a try. And third and finally, it will be a little bit like a movie trailer where I'll show you a couple of introductionary things to get you excited to give it a read. Okay? Now, let's continue. In this book, our dear witches are tourists in another country and they get up to all sorts of shenanigans. One of the big draw points of this book is that this book is a whole bunch of fairy tales mishmashed together, and our witches sort of travel through each one of them. The tourists, as tourists, they don't really abide foreign culture and all the weird things, and our witches cause a bunch of mayhem.
Anybody up for some shenanigans?
Now, you may recall in the last video we did in this series on Reaper Man, book 11, I said that was the book that was really the turning point. From that point on, Discworld starts becoming consistently strong, and I really wholeheartedly agree with it. Most people will agree, Discworld gets better as you go, and I really do think it is the first 10 that can be inconsistent in quality. We're really up to the point where they are consistently good from here on, and it's really a case of whether they're good or great, but they are of consistent good quality. I will say, though, in total contradiction to what I just said, Witches Abroad is very comedy heavy, and I feel like the plot in the 3rd act in particular is fantastic, but for most of the book, it feels like it's all funny and then a lot of plot that's serious at the end. So maybe not the most balanced of the books. I personally think this is one of the weakest of the Witches novels, but still, a consistently strong book overall. I think I have a bit of an unpopular opinion. Most people love Witches Abroad, and I think you will too, but let's give it a try. I should mention, Witches Abroad actually has a little bit more continuity than what we've seen so far in Discworld. So like I've said, they are episodic books. But from here, the Witches book starts sort of linking to the Witches books before that, where a lot of the other series don't necessarily do that. I'll just remind you of the reading order of this series. So the Witches books start with Equal Rights, then into Weird Sisters, today's book, Witches Abroad, then Lords and Ladies, Masquerade, and Carpe Jugulum. And of course, you would consider the Tiffany Aching books to be a sister series or like a follow-up series to the Witches books. Okay, let's actually talk about the story of this one. So in the far-off country of Ganua, our fairy godmother has just passed away, and she has left her magic wand in the care of Magrat, one of our coven, the youngest, the maiden of our coven. So Granny, Nanny, and Magrat have to travel to the opposite side of the disc in order to reclaim this wand and finish the fairy godmother's great task. Because there is a young servant girl called Emberella who needs Magrat's, or her fairy godmother's help to get to the ball, meet the Duke, fall in love, and live happily ever after.
These things are easy, right?
Except there is some sinister magic going on in this country with a dark force trying to make everyone have a happily ever after, whether that's what they want or not. And our coven must solve the mystery, discover the true villain behind this whole happily ever after situation, and also prove that happily ever after is not all it's cracked up to be. Now, this book's a bit unique in Discworld because it has a very linear plotline, where a lot of stories will have this plotline over here and this plotline over here. This book really just goes from one set piece to another because they are traveling a little bit. They are tourists, so it's a bit more straightforward. Our first plotline is the traveling itself. The witches are going across the disc. Now, this plotline is very much like it's like a group of grumpy old British women going into foreign countries and complaining that everything's different. It's very much a satire of tourism culture and the entitlement that tourists can bring with them. It's like the absurdity of going to another country and then being confused and annoyed that everything's different when isn't that what you went there to do? It's fine. This plotline also features a lot of different fairy tales. There's a couple of them like Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Wizard of Oz, that sort of thing. And they're all sort of, mashed together and in funny little ways. And a very comedy heavy plotline, the tourism one. Our second plotline is what I'll call the godmother another arc. This is where Magrat must find the wand, find Emberella, and help her achieve her destiny. Of course, Magrat is one of the clumsiest of our witches. She's the least confident and least sure of herself. Granny always says she's wet behind her ears, meaning she doesn't really know what she's doing or a bit flaky.
That's true, I am flaky.
And the third plotline is that Granny has suddenly become afraid of mirrors. Every time she sees a mirror, she either breaks it or throws a cloth over it, and she refuses in her stubbornness to tell people why. So there's definitely something going on with mirrors. In fact, I think the most recent cover for Witches Abroad has a mirror on the front cover because of how significant this plotline becomes. Now, while I do think this is at a point where the story is consistently good, and Book 12 is certainly one of the stronger Discworld books, I do think that the fairy tale plotline and the tourism types thing, because it's so comedy heavy, it's a little bit imbalanced. As we often see in Discworld books, trying to balance the comedy and then the plot lines and characters and then the big deep themes that we see in Discworld, this one does have a little bit of a balance issue as well. I think there's so much focus put on funny tourism gags that, I don't know, I think it was a little bit distracting at times.
There's so much here to do.
But highlighting characters, something I really like about the Witches novels and what makes them, in many ways, distinct from the other sub-series in Discworld, is just how much time we spend with each of our members of the Coven, and we get some really deep character work because each of their story leads into the next. In many ways, I think the Witches books has the deepest character work. I don't know, I might get some pushback for that, because people will be like, oh, Sam Vimes, obviously, in the City Watch. And like, yes, but it's not quite the same, because Sam Vimes has an arc, but not so much everyone else in the City Watch. In this, we actually watch the three witches in the Coven go through many ups and downs across many books, and they learn and grow in different ways. And so there's a lot more emphasis put on their character. What's special about this book is the way it focuses on Granny Esmeralda Weatherwax, because I think this is the first book where we really see her true darkness. Like, Granny's always been an abrupt personality, very stern and strict and demanding, but I think this is the first time we really see a hint of her potential for evil. And it's sort of like Granny knows she has to be good. If she were to go evil, she'd be super evil, so she's unwilling to compromise on her own standards because she knows the dark potential she has. It's a fascinating depiction of a character. I should spotlight, this is also the book where we get introduced to Grebo, the most evil cat alive. Nanny Og is the comedy, the whimsy one in the group. She always plays and sings her songs. She's always very comedy heavy. But she has the most evil cat, Grebo, and Nanny sees absolutely nothing wrong because he's a darling and he could, kill any wild creature or cause any harm, and she would never have a problem with it. It's a great little pairing, those two. This book also, I want to highlight, I think it's probably the first book that has a really big Discworld villain. You see, Discworld, particularly, I think from this point on, we get some standout villains. Terry Pratchett knew how to write a bad guy, like a classic era Disney villain, someone who's just sort of unhinged and perfectly evil. Now, we've had villains like Dios in Pyramids, the High Priest, and then there's Brother Doorkeeper and the Dragon from Guards. And of course, I think I should mention the Auditors from Reaper Man. But I think this is our first time looking at really complex, evil, but flawed villains, because they become a staple, and Terry Pratchett goes hard on these villains. But I won't actually mention who this villain is, because that's sort of a spoiler, but definitely, I think, our first time where we get a really big one. And it becomes a common theme from this point on. So like all Witches novels, this one's got a whole bunch of references to other texts and other books and stories out there. This one really focuses on fairy tales. There's quite a few Hans Christian Andersen's type stories. The fairy godmother who's looking for Emberella, very clearly referenced to Cinderella. Cinder, Ember, oh, it's too good. Okay, look, maybe it's not that good. I like my puns, okay? Just let me have this. There's also sort of a reference to the final country. They end up in being a lot like New Orleans, with sort of like swamps and Mardi Gras and a bit of voodoo magic as well. This story, like all of them, has deeper themes, and I think one of my favorite ones is from this one, the idea that life does not always play out the way of a story, nor should it. And in this story, we see a villain is trying to give everyone a happily ever after. And that doesn't sound like something a villain would do. And our witches, who are traditionally, they're the bad guys in stories, and they're ugly, and they got warts and big noses, and they're the ones who are trying to stop everyone from having a happily ever after. But in typical Pratchett wisdom, he shows us that life is unpredictable and it doesn't always fit perfect stories, and human nature doesn't always fit perfect stories either. We want these perfect stories because they make us feel good, but at a certain point you've got to, you got to grow up and accept that life does not always work out the way the stories do. But it's not just a case of like, or you accept the bad things in life. It's the idea of you get to live your own life and you get to choose your own life, and you shouldn't live a life just because that's what's expected of you because everyone else is doing it, or because it's a destiny or it's a story that people like. It's allowing people to make their own choices about what's important in their life, and giving that room for growth and individualism that I think is so important. Another theme in this story is the I guess you would call it the darkness within humanity. It's a funny theme to pop up in a comedy heavy series, but again, Pratchett does it so well. He has this beautiful quote about it that says, "The good are innocent and create justice. The bad are guilty, which is why they invent mercy." It's also this commentary that sometimes good people can, be a bit too hard on others, and sometimes it's the dark and evil people who understand and show compassion and empathy to other people who might be broken. It's a much more compassionate worldview. There's this other quote here as well. "Humanity is a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there." Which is just perfect for coming in a book that's all about tourism. It's like, can we just be a tourist to humanity and then rack off and go do something else because humanity kind of sucks? One more quote here, if you'll indulge me. It's that racism is not a problem on the Discworld because, what with trolls and dwarves and so on, speciesism was more interesting. Black and white lived in perfect harmony and ganged up on green. But ultimately, while I think this book is, making fun and making satire of tourism culture, it's also celebrating the idea of exploration, of being a tourist in life and in the world, and living your own life and having new experiences, and going out to see the world and taking the long way home.
It's a dangerous business, Frodo. Going out your door, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
There's a saying at the end of the book called "see the elephant." Now, of course, elephants are a reoccurring thing in the Discworld, but it's an old phrase. Actually, I'll double check it.
2 hours later.
Yeah, so seeing the elephant is an American phrase, but from like the late 19th century. It's not really in use anymore, but this book references it. It even says it ends with we saw the elephant. But it's a saying that means to go out and see things and have new experiences, but at great cost. Usually it means like, you might get sick on your journey, or you have to spend lots of money, or it humbles you and maybe you see something that you don't like. But I think ultimately the story is a call to, maybe not be a jerk of a tourist, but to still get out there and live life. Ultimately, I think it's a call to all of us to see the elephant and to explore and enjoy life, even if it does come at a cost. But we'll leave it there. That's all for my thoughts on Book 12. Coming up next, we're going to look at another standalone, and one of the finest bits of Discworld literature is Small Gods. A great starting place all around. This is an S-tier novel. It literally doesn't get much better than this, so I hope you'll join me for that. Guys, if you do want to support the work I do on this channel, you can buy my books, The Immortal Investigations. You can buy something off my shop, or follow me on Patreon and give me a bit of support there. Otherwise, like and subscribe for more video reviews like this one, and check out another video on my channel. I'll talk to you very soon with another Discworld read-through. I hope you enjoy a good book today, and I hope it's a Discworld book. Bye. Oh, man.